You know, when you're on stage, right, you're going, well, you know, if I blow this note or I blow this chord, I mean, it's gone. You know, on an album, it's there to be repeated digitally till the end of time.
A worldwide concert broadcast with the Smashing Pumpkins, live from the Riviera Theatre in Chicago, Illinois.
In late October 1995, the Smashing Pumpkins gave us Mellon, Collie, and the Infinite Sadness. They weren't just releasing a new record, and this wasn't a standard follow-up. They were rolling the dice on an audacious gamble. It was a sprawling double or even triple album, and a declaration that Billy Corgan and company weren't simply another alt-rock band riding the post-grunge wave. They wanted to cement themselves in history, and the strategy behind that release made it abundantly clear.
The four of us come from nothing, and you know, we hatched this little dream between us and fought all odds and succeeded.
We're hours away from the official release of the Smashing Pumpkins' new 2-CD set, Mellon, Collie, and the Infinite Sadness. And we're just minutes away from hearing the band's celebratory record release party from their hometown of Chicago. I'm sitting here with the Smashing Pumpkins themselves.
Hi, I'm Andy Fenstermaker, host of Poetic Wax, a weekly music history series where I dig into the record collection I've been building since the 1990s to explore the history of a band, album, or song from within. And today we're looking at an album that was formative in my obsession with music. I'm not talking about Mellon, Collie itself, though that most certainly was. I'm talking about this. The Smashing Pumpkins, live at Riviera Theatre, October 23, 1995. Back in the 1990s, album releases followed a pretty standard playbook. Labels would send advanced singles to radio, maybe an MTV video premiere to stir up some buzz, and then the album itself would hit stores on a Tuesday, the industry's traditional release day. Fans would line up at Tower Records or Sam Goody at midnight, hoping to snag the first copies of albums that were making a big splash. Big albums might get press tours, late-night TV slots, or listening parties, but the process was still fairly localized and rooted in physical media like radio spins, magazine features, and posters in record shops. There wasn't the same sense of nationwide real-time connection we take for granted today, which made the Smashing Pumpkins strategy feel like such a groundbreaking gamble. First, to hype the launch, MTV aired a rockumentary on the band on October 17, featuring all four members of the Pumpkins, as well as a live video from 1994 dubbed Viewphoria.
Billy, we know what you did on your summer vacation, headlined Lollapalooza, that you just finished a couple days ago, right?
Yes, no more.
No more. Any rest for the weary?
Now I'm going to start writing right away, and we plan on doing our double CD concept album, so.
Then, instead of relying on the typical promo cycle, the band plotted something far riskier, a live coast-to-coast broadcast. On release night, October 23, 1995, the Pumpkins staged a concert at Riviera Theatre in their hometown of Chicago. And the performance was broadcast live across dozens of alternative rock radio stations nationwide.
Where in the course of recording this album did it become such a big and epic undertaking?
We decided to do the double album long before we ever actually set out to do it.
Long before we even started the band.
We talked about it long before we thought we could do it.
A double album is every band's dream, I hear.
It was in the DNA.
Okay, is it a concept album?
No.
In an era before mass availability of the internet, before social media, or even widespread dependence on email, pulling off a simultaneous nationwide broadcast was absolutely radical. An ambitious attempt to unify listeners in real time. The fans across the country could tune in at the same time, experience the record's launch as a collective moment. And I was one of them. My trusty boombox was plugged in and a slew of blank cassettes at the ready. I was committed to capturing the entire moment so I could relive it for all eternity. But it didn't go smoothly. Simulcasting, short for simultaneous broadcasting, is when the same program is transmitted across multiple media outlets or channels at the same time, allowing different audiences to experience a single event in real time together. Simulcasting a live performance in this way was not new. In fact, by 1995, it had been around for decades. In the 1950s, WQXR in New York was a well-documented early example. It broadcast the same classical music content on both its AM and FM station, so listeners could essentially tune two radios in to the same program and approximate a stereo experience. NBC's broadcast of Arturo Toscanini's NBC Symphony performance on March 15, 1952 is similarly cited as one of the first instances where a concert was simulcast both on radio and television to audiences. By the 1980s, simulcasting had become more visible in rock and pop culture. A good example? Frank Zappa's Halloween shows in New York City in 1981, which was broadcast live by MTV and by FM radio stations simultaneously. Live Aid in 1985 is another high-profile instance of multi-station, multi-platform broadcasting on a huge scale. Thousands of radio stations and TV outlets worldwide carried the event in parallel. But here's where things differed. What set Smashing Pumpkins' broadcast apart was how they used the medium. Unlike some of the other examples that crossed platforms, this was radio only, linking dozens of alt-rock stations across the country in a synchronized moment. Even though the concept had been around for decades, in 1995, that was still somewhat revolutionary. It transformed the album release into a collective listening experience that could unite fans coast to coast purely through sound. The concert itself at Chicago's Riviera Theatre blurred the lines between performance and promotion, too. This was the official unveiling of Mellon, Collie and the Infinite Sadness. The concept of simulcasting as a record release strategy was new, different, and honestly quite exciting. Unlike the carefully scripted simulcasts of decades prior, this one felt alive. It was raw, unscripted, and teetering on chaos. It captured the spirit of mid-90s alt-rock at its peak, a movement unafraid to dream big, even if it meant the whole thing might collapse on air. So let's get into that part, why don't we?
Okay, so what are you? Are you nervous? Are you happy? Are you confident?
I'll tell you,
feeling?
Bill, we're going in a little crazy. We're feeling headstrong. We're playing confident. We're going to play good ball out there tonight. We heard the audience is tough. We know it's a Chicago audience.
Cheap Trick opened and would return to the stage at the end, joining the Smashing Pumpkins for the final three songs of the night. But partway through the set, during the Smashing Pumpkins' performance of their third song, Zero, the Riviera Theatre suffered a power outage. A generator caught fire and the venue went silent and dark. For several tense minutes, the biggest rock band in Chicago, in the midst of a performance beamed live across the country, live on radio, was left standing in the dark. On the airwaves, dead air hummed, a broadcaster's literal nightmare. In a way, the outage mirrored the chaos and ambition of the album itself. A project so big and so overstuffed with vision, it strained the limits of what could actually hold it. Take the original vinyl pressing of the album. The massive scope of Mellon, Collie includes 28 songs that had to be compressed down to fit onto 3 discs, as opposed to the normal 2 for a double album. But even that was condensed to make it onto 3 discs. That's why you actually get a better listening experience with the 4 LP box set. Back to the launch. Fans at the show, as well as those tuning in across the country, were left in the dark, wondering what was going on. Then some of the power came back. 10 minutes later, the Smashing Pumpkins, still in the dark, were able to continue the performance, restarting Zero and then continuing with a few favorites, Today and Disarm from Siamese Dream. Real fast, you can check out the transcript of this episode and hear some of the music discussed over on my Substack. Sign up for free at poeticwax.substack.com. Also, a quick shout out and thanks to my paid subscribers. Join today for just $2 a month. You can also leave a super tip thanks if you've enjoyed this video. 30 years on, the power glitch during the Riviera Theatre performance has mostly been relegated to history. It's added to the legend of a truly legendary album. And honestly, most don't even remember it happened at all. But for those of us who recorded it live, we got it all. Commercial breaks, the power outage, the radio call signs. For me, those tapes have long since disappeared, finding their way into some dustbin somewhere in the past 30 years, or maybe donated with a handful of other cassettes from my youth. In their place is a replica, a bootleg stripped of all the filler, including the power outage, the radio call signs, the ads, containing the concert in what I assume is full and pressed to vinyl. Various bootlegs exist, and the quality is satisfactory for what it is. But the real treasure is having a piece of my youth returned into my collection, an item steeped in great nostalgia. Less than a month later, on October 11, 1995, the band would hit Saturday Night Live, and frontman Billy Corgan would publicly debut his freshly shaved head, ultimately stating, quote, "I just got so sick of worrying about appearance that by shaving my hair completely de-emphasizes the way I look. I kind of subscribe to the Einstein theory that the less you have to think about, the more upwards you become." And apparently, that's something he still lives by 30 years later. As for Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, well, the album went on to debut at #1, selling over 240,000 copies in the first week. And that launch night, blackout and all, set the tone for Melancholy. Larger than life, messy, unpredictable, but truly unforgettable.
And the other part you're not seeing is like the big gladiators we have on stage. Just imagine it. It's
There's
wild.
one on each side. Big professional wrestlers, the American gladiators, you know.
So everyone has to imagine all this as they watch that.
Right.
Okay.
And
Thanks a lot, you guys.
especially the part when James lights himself on fire. You won't be able to see that on the radio, but
It'll just be a sizzling
we're going to mic him.
cackle.